All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Miguel El Skipper Quintero, and I'm here with Bryan Paz Hernandez. And Bryan and I decided to start this podcast series to talk about, well, national politics, of course, and talk about local politics. And just talk about whatever's on our minds. Bryan and I are both in agreement on a lot of issues, but we disagree on other issues. I think I tend to be a little bit more conservative than Bryan, but I'm sure he has a lot of conservative values as well. And I tend to be very liberal on certain aspects, and even more liberal than Bryan might be. I think Bryan's a little bit more in the middle. And Bryan, if you want to talk about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm super excited to be doing this podcast with Miguel. My name is Bryan Paz Hernandez. I'm a high school science teacher, and I ran for Miami-Dade County Commissioner for District 11. And I really believe that this podcast is going to be a great opportunity for us to talk about the issues that matter to the whole country. And, you know, we're in the middle of a presidential race, so we have lots to talk about, lots we'll be developing. I met Miguel while we were both running for office here in Miami-Dade County. And even though we're from different sides of the aisle, I found him to be a really, really awesome dude. And, you know, people from different parties, different ideologies can be friends.
Excellent.
And that's why we're doing this, because we feel like we can talk about politics without, you know, wanting to kill each other. Our podcast is called Cafecito and Politics. We both love our Cuban coladas. Claro que sí.
Yep.
And we also like to talk about politics, so we're like, let's do a show where we get to do both.
That's right.
What are you drinking right now, Miguel?
Un café con leche.
Café con leche?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
That's my go-to every time.
Every morning, yes.
So a little bit more about me. This is my home that you're in. This is the treehouse that I've built. You can see that it is open. It is a true treehouse. This is my playset. And this is actually something that I'm contesting with the county. They've given me citations on this, and they denied me permits, but that's for a different episode. You guys can see that on my YouTube channel, which is Miami Circus on YouTube. You can, which I'll upload this, but this will be uploaded to a separate YouTube channel because this is Cafecito and Politics. So I was born here in Miami, Florida. I ran for mayor of Miami-Dade County. And now we did have issues with the state of Florida and Miami-Dade County. They took my nickname off of the ballot. So my name is Miguel Quintero, or Miguel Angel Quintero. And I had my nickname as El Skipper because I'm a product of two cultures. So they felt that was misleading. They actually told the public that's misleading the public. They never told me how or why. So there wasn't much that the courts did do. I did sue over it. We had some emergency hearings, and judges were like, what do you want me to do? We can't change the ballots now. Really, the only thing that I have now is a tort claim because they hurt the campaign. So even though I raised more money than some of my other opponents, even though I campaigned more, I made more television appearances, I finished dead last because nobody knew who Miguel Quintero was. I campaigned on El Skipper, or Skipper. That is my nickname. I've had that nickname in business. I've had that nickname throughout the last 6 years.
It's a great nickname. It's catchy.
I appreciate that. But yeah, so they took that off. So yeah, born in Miami, Florida, and I have a business, Miami Flying Trapeze, and that's actually in the background. You guys might not be able to see with this camera angle. You see now this lake, we own a piece of this lake. We have a 1-acre property, my wife and I do, and we felt like this was a good spot to do our podcast. Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, Miguel, I want to ask, what was your favorite part about running for mayor?
Talking to people.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part. You got a little bit of everything. You got really nice people. And I would say the majority, not a super majority, but the majority of people were relatively nice and wanted to be engaged and talk the issues and get to know me as a candidate. The most discouraging thing was people didn't care. They weren't interested. They weren't going to vote. You know, this is one of our lowest voter turnouts probably in history in Miami-Dade County. Yeah. People aren't that interested in local politics.
They're not.
Which is unfortunate because it's the number one, it's the main government that affects our lives. Right. People think the presidency or even the governor, those don't affect our everyday life as much as local politics does or local government does. And then there were people who were just really angry and they just wanted to know partisan. Are you Republican or are you Democrat? Well, we can't run, as you know. We can't run as Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. We can't have a party affiliation because this is a position that is directly under the governor. The governor can fire at will. He doesn't need any excuses. Now, it's prudent to have an excuse. It's prudent to have a justification to firing mayors and commissioners and certain positions that are directly under him. But this is a non-constitutional position. Yet, even though we are elected, the governor still has the power to fire us, where the sheriff, the governor has zero power, cannot touch the sheriff, cannot fire the sheriff. The sheriff can only be recalled or impeached, as I understand it.
Yeah. Well, for those who've never heard of me, my name is Bryan Hernandez. I ran for Miami-Dade County Commissioner, District 11, which includes West Kendall, the town Miami area, and unfortunately I lost my election on August 20th, but I did get close to 6,000 votes, and we raised not that much money. So I knocked on thousands of doors. We had a really awesome team of super volunteers who worked their butts off to help me win. And my election platform was very simple. Cut property taxes, reduce property insurance costs, stop the overdevelopment, the gentrification that is making Kendall very different than it used to be when I was being raised in West Kendall. Other facts about me: I'm 29 years old. I majored in political science at American University in Washington, D.C. I'm currently ninth grade. And so I have some middle school students. I teach science. And I've been a teacher for this is my second year. But before I taught, I worked at United Way Miami as a social worker. And then I worked at Catalyst Miami as a community organizer. Before then, I worked for a number of campaigns, including Donna Shalala for Congress. And I've also had different random jobs. You know, I've worked at Massage Envy at one point as a front desk person. Nice. I've been a server at Chili's. Don't recommend it. I had a really horrible time doing that. Born and raised in Miami, 305 till I die.
Yep. And you said it was hot today, huh?
Super hot. I think it was like 100 degrees or something.
So for those of you, if you've never been to South Florida, August, September, they're brutal down here.
Yeah.
It's intense. So even though we don't get that high heat that the West would get, we have the humidity that comes with it, and it just feels comparable.
Yes.
And you can't escape it. It's 85 degrees at night. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning. It'll be 85 degrees in Miami this time of year.
And it's
wild.
humid at night,
right?
All 24/7. So let's talk a little bit more about our elections. You know, we have just gone through this incredible experience of running for office. Not everybody gets to say they ran for office. And even though we lost, I think we did a service to the community by highlighting important issues. Mm-hmm. And so I guess the question for both of us is, are you ever going to run again? And if so, what did you learn from this experience?
Well, main thing I learned, and this is coming from the loser's corner, of course, it's not a fair system. You got to remember, when it comes to the media, these are entertainment companies. You're used to go to your evening news. You have to remember they are not a bona fide news station. They are a private entity, and they are an entertainment company. So if you buy their time or buy time on their news stations, you would have reporting on you. Now, they can be fair and they can be biased. It doesn't matter because it's a private company. And depending on how much you spend is going to depend on how much time you get. Now, if they don't like you, but you bought a lot of time, all right, they'll ask you the hard questions, but they won't go too hard on you because they want that money. But if you don't, they have no obligations to cover you. They did cover me a little bit, but they didn't cover some of the other candidates because the other candidates declined interviews. I did not decline any interviews, so I was on some of the TV stations. They did edit in such a way that they portrayed me in the way that they wanted to. See, I'm a guy who saved an entire building from fire, caught the arsonist, brought him to justice. He went to jail for attempted murder.
Wow.
Right. They never said that once. Instead, they wanted to get me as the trapeze artist who had a grudge against Miami-Dade County because, well, I am in a feud with Miami-Dade County and Miami-Dade County officials.
You have a grudge, but it's merited.
It's merited.
Totally merited.
Correct. So I am suing in federal court for constitutional violations by Miami-Dade County, and they're bona fide violations. It's legit. You can check them out, and again, you can see it on my YouTube channel. A lot of those complaints. They've given me bogus citations here, and they were unconstitutional as well. Plus, they were violating state statutes. So it's a bona fide grudge that I do have with these particular top-ranking officials in Miami-Dade County. It's not necessarily just the mayor. It's just the buck stops with the mayor. We have a strong mayor in Miami-Dade County.
Right.
And this mayor, I believe, has instructed her departments, because there's 25 to 27 departments in Miami-Dade County, one of them being RER, Resources and Economic Regulations. That's RER. And code enforcement, building, zoning, all of that is under that umbrella of RER. She has instructed code enforcement to go out and give as many citations as they possibly can, even if it's in the gray area. And they're instructing code enforcement officers to go onto people's properties. They just can't go into the backyard, but they can go into the front yard and take pictures and investigate. Now, you tell me where that is constitutional when everybody knows there is a curtilage, and that is your yard. It can be the front porch for a lot of people who have apartments, but in balconies and stuff like that. But when you have a big yard like I have here, and it's fenced in, and there are signs that are clearly posted, no trespassing, well, pretty much the whole yard, front and back, are part of the curtilage, and that is protected by the Fourth Amendment. So they didn't have any warrants, and they didn't have my permission, and yet they would come in on 2 occasions. They came in, took pictures, and searched the property. They just never went to the back. I had an instructor tell me, inspector tell me, that is the way they are trained, that they can do this. And these inspectors are not the brightest bulbs in the shed. And they just do as they are told. When you have a job, you do what your boss tells you to do, and you just trust that your boss is telling you that you're doing something legal. But you're an idiot if you do that, because if you know something is clearly illegal, you shouldn't be doing it. But then they'll just fire you. But the whole point is the mayor, I believe, has sent out code enforcement with these instructions, and that trickled down to this training. Since she has been mayor in 2020, our current mayor is our first woman mayor, and I was very proud of that. We both voted for her. We both supported her. He was actually on her campaign. Bryan was. I became a huge critic when I saw that the number of violations have doubled since she became mayor. And that tells me they're setting out to do this. And the whole reason I believe that they do it is most people are not going to fight this in court, because it would cost you tens of thousands of dollars to fight something where you pay the $500 and they're happy to get off your back, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, just fix it. We'll sign off. No big deal. But you're fixing something that never needed to be fixed. Right. You're fixing something that it's the fruit of the poisonous tree. They should have never given you a citation based on these things. They also, code enforcement, I know this for a fact, was driving around even after the law passed where they couldn't do this, calling in anonymous complaints. And then, of course, they quickly stopped doing it because I challenged it, and this will be challenged. But I challenged it, but then I kind of stopped that challenge to go to federal court.
Do you think you're going to run for office again?
I never had a desire to run for mayor. I ran so that I can get this message out, that the government is corrupt. At least this government. Not all governments. It's like saying you can't say all police officers are corrupt. Right. Not all governments are corrupt. Some of these people are incredible Americans who believe deeply in our rights, and all of us. And they have a deep connection to the community. But in Miami-Dade County, I think this particular administration is extremely corrupt.
Yeah, and corruption in Dade County is I think that's one of the things we agreed on in this election, is just how rampant it is.
Correct.
And, if you live outside of Miami-Dade County, I think you should still listen to this, because I'm sure this is the case for any other county where the campaign finance rules are similar, where any billionaire or millionaire or any corporation can give unlimited funds to any candidate for commissioner, for mayor, for you name it, and influence the election. And we know from political science research that 90% plus of the time that the candidate that has the most money wins.
Correct.
And I knew that was true going into my race. I knew I was going to be underfunded, but I hope to be the exception. If you have a system where any politician has to basically be the puppet of corporate interests, you're never going to have a government that actually responds to the people. And it also just lays the groundwork for corruption. I mean, we see that, when Carlos Jimenez was mayor of Miami-Dade County, his family member got a contract with the county in the millions of dollars. We see Raquel Regalado has a similar situation where she's getting rich off of the county contracts. I mean, this is truly, it makes people sick to realize that our dollars are being used in such a reckless way. And I think everyone, Democrat, Independent, Republican, should be enraged by this because this is not supposed to be, county government is there to serve the public, not get rich and make other people richer. In Miami-Dade County, I mean, just look at the history. It's full of bad actors corrupting the system.
And I don't think that's changed. It's just different faces, and they word it differently.
The city of Miami too.
Of course. And these politicians, it doesn't matter whether they're conservative or liberal, they are working to enrich themselves. And
both parties do it.
Both parties do it. And they will work with each other to make sure that, okay, I'll scratch your back on this one because it's important to you, but you got to scratch my back on the next one because it's important to me. And they frame it however they want to frame it. I tell people it's the same thing with when you go to court, and judges can do whatever they want with impunity in that courtroom. There's no accountability whatsoever, and that's fine because you can always appeal and go before a higher court that would say, no, what that judge did was wrong. But the reality is judges can do whatever they want with immunities, full immunities. And it's very similar to police officers. They can do whatever they want with immunity. It's qualified now, qualified immunity. But when it comes to lawmakers, in the executive or legislative, they have their own immunity, just like judges. Where as long as it has to do with government, county government, they can never be prosecuted for decisions that they make, even if it blatantly hurts the public because they did it under color of law. And as long as they can argue that it was done under color of law, well, they're allowed to make bad decisions. That's the way it works. So if we elect an idiot, which I believe we often do, well, they're immune. They're immune to all of that. So they will work together to make sure that they can get rich on their own. And you'll see it in their financial disclosures. If you're in Florida or if you know of Form 6, you can see how a politician starts off, might be worth $200,000 or $1 million or $4 million. And you'll see that every year that money goes up an extra $1 million to $2 million, depending on, for the mayor's, the one that I, of course, investigated, she went from, in 2013, she was worth roughly $4.6 million. Her husband's a gynecologist. She's an attorney. And now in 2023, she was worth $12.8 million. So this is a position that pays $200,000 a year as mayor. And I think commissioners at the time were getting paid $60,000. When she was a commissioner, they're roughly getting paid $60,000 a year.
So the math ain't mathing, as the kids say.
The math doesn't math.
It is clear that you're getting rich off of the position,
right,
and people are giving you money because of the position that you have.
Right.
Let me tell you about what I learned in my election. So I learned that, like you said, not that many people are interested in local politics. I learned that money has tremendous influence in the election. Again, I knew that before going in, but I was just blown away by how much it affects the outcome. Because look, a mailer, 80 cents a piece. A yard sign, $20 a piece. Mm-hmm. I mean, those costs add up. And I did ask people to donate, and I had friends and family that donated, but outside of that, nobody really wanted to give.
Right.
So it's hard to raise money as a candidate. Mm-hmm. It's very, very hard. And so you have basically a system that's set up where outsiders like us, it's designed to not let us in.
Correct.
And hopefully there can be rules that are changed in the future so that it can be truly a democratic process.
Correct.
I don't think if you asked the average voter in District 11, who is Robert Gonzalez and what does he stand for, nobody would know.
Right.
But he won because more people saw his name. He had more yard signs and more mailers with his name, Roberto Gonzalez. I actually had genuine connections with people. I knocked on doors. I talked to them. I listened to them. Hey, what would you like to see fixed in this community? People mentioned potholes. They mentioned overdevelopment of too many apartments in their neighborhoods, and they're not used to high-rise or mid-rise apartments in their neighborhood. The fact that property insurance costs are too expensive. I learned a lot just by talking to people, and I genuinely was like what's up? What is your concern? My opponent didn't do that. I don't think he ever left his house. He was just raising money. And if you look at his donations, most of them were $1,000 donations, which is the max contribution. So,
well, and he has a PAC as well.
He has a PAC as well.
Right.
Which he got even $15,000 from a casino in Hallandale Beach.
Right.
So what does that tell you? What is he going to do if now
Which
that
is
he's
fair.
elected?
And in all fairness, you had said something earlier that they don't represent the people. I wouldn't necessarily say it that way. I think politicians do represent people, and companies are people now. Citizens United. If it's got an FEI number, it is considered a person, and the contributions act the same way. Individual people can contribute up to $1,000 in these elections.
1,000 for companies too.
And then the companies can do it as well. The companies can do it as well, where it's 1,000 per company. And so basically, you can set up, and it's so easy to set up companies. By the way, it's the easiest thing in the world to set up companies, and it's the company that's giving. So if I set up 100 companies, and I'm the registered agent, basically they're my companies, LLCs, but it's got an FEI number, I now can vote or contribute 100 times, or someone else can contribute 100 times with those 100 companies.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Because it's all about
true.
It's true. And you set up whatever company you want. A company's a company. It doesn't have to be profitable. It's a company. So this is why people are talking about, and I don't know if anybody's made this argument, why Citizens United must be overturned. Because, again, the system is set up for the elites. And you must be worthy, because I do consider myself a part of the elite class when it comes to comfortability, security, education. I don't hide it from anybody. I happen to do blue-collar work, or I have a rough neck, which I do because I'm always out in the sun, because by my choice. But if I wanted to go to law school, I can go to law school. If I wanted to be an architect, I can be an architect. I went to college, and I have a degree. I just didn't want to continue my education. I was happy with what I was doing in life.
Yeah.
So Citizens United must be overturned. If for anything else,
110%.
you know, it's because anybody can create as many companies as they want, but you don't need to anymore because you have PACs, so people don't do that. But it would be another end around.
Yeah.
And there's always loopholes and we're electing attorneys, and attorneys know how to play in the gray. Well, they know how to bend the law to their will, and they're the ones who have the influence of does go before judges. They actually have personal relationships with these judges, as Daniela Levine Cava, our mayor, does have relationships with judges.
Another thing I learned, Miguel, from my election was that at the end of the day, people are really good. Every day, people want something better for their community and their family. So many people told me, hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. And I think they said thank you because they're not used to somebody who's a politician knocking on their door.
Right.
And actually listening to them. So people are hungry for somebody who is trustworthy, honest, that truly listens to them. People do want to be well represented. And so I think that's why I got close to 6,000 votes, because they saw somebody who genuinely cares.
Yeah.
And
you walked away with almost 30% of the vote.
Close,
of the turnout.
I think it was like 26 or 27%.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm mentioning that not to stroke my own ego. I'm mentioning that because other people, including the people listening to this podcast, you can run for office, and you can, if you have an honest heart and you're authentic, you can go far in this business of politics, because there is absolutely a demand for it. People are tired of the corrupt politicians, and they're tired of broken promises.
I agree. And if we can we segue that into the presidential? I know we had something else in line, but the presidential race that's up and coming, and talking about how people are tired, as we are. People are tired of the mainstream politicians of today. And I think that's why, in my opinion, because you're not necessarily a Trump supporter. I'm not sure.
No,
maybe you are. I think there's some things you might agree with him.
Sure.
But not necessarily. In my case, I'm not necessarily a Trump supporter either, but he will have my vote this time around. And I left the Democratic Party, as have you. So I have left the Democratic Party, and I'm now a registered libertarian. But are you still part of the Democratic Party?
I am. I would consider myself a Democrat. I will be voting for Kamala in November.
So the reason I believe the country does gravitate towards Trump, because Trump is not the traditional Republican.
Right. People like that he's outside of the box.
He's outside of the box. And I think that the Republican Party base has been going and is continually going and going through a civil war where what used to be the Tea Party, what used to be I wouldn't even say the ultra conservatives, but those who are just tired of the status quo elite class Republican, which is where you get your Liz Cheneys, your Dick Cheneys, your Bushes. These are your Mitt Romneys. These are your elites. They are the rhinos, as they call them, and now they're pigeonholed or they're typecast as the rhinos. But these are your typical old school.
Yeah.
Your old school Republicans.
I think that the reason why Trump has so much success in politics is because of the same thing I was just talking about. People want somebody who they can trust, who's authentic, and is the antithesis of corrupt politicians.
Yeah.
Trump is a lot of those things. For all the gaffes that he has, all the foot in the mouth moments, people trust him, and he is what you get. Or what's the phrase? What you see is what you get.
Yeah. But I think he has
like
won. People like that. He's won the hearts of the American conservative.
Right. And I'll say this. One issue, by the way, I'm going to be voting for Harris in November, but one issue that I do have with her is that she does come across as a standard politician 110%. Because she has moments where they'll ask her a question and she does the politician talk where she talks a lot and doesn't say anything at all of substance.
Right.
They asked her about what do you do about inflation, and she spent 2 minutes talking about, oh yeah, inflation is a real problem. I think inflation should be addressed, and we're talking about prices of gas. It's like I'm not asking you to define what inflation is. I'm asking you what are you going to do about inflation.
And in all fairness, Trump does it as well.
Yes.
Just in his own way.
Yes.
But where Kamala's more polished, he's unpolished, and that gives the American people that feeling of okay, he's not your typical elite class politician.
So since you said you're going to vote for Trump, I'm going to vote for Kamala. What would you like to see Trump do during the debate on Tuesday?
That's a great question. I don't care.
Okay.
I genuinely don't care.
But what do you think he should do?
He's going to do what Trump does
to win, because right now we don't know who's going to win. So what should he do in order to win this election?
I think he's doing what he's supposed to be doing this time around. I think he's listening more to his advisors, and I think he's listening more to the American people, because you can see how he's flip-flopping on the abortion issues.
He has.
And
totally.
see, that's where I'm super liberal on that. I believe it's a woman's choice. It's between her and her doctor. And if there's if a man wants to get involved, he's secondary. He can have a say, but it's not going to be his choice. It's not his body. Once that doctor determines that baby can live outside of the womb, now the man has a choice at that time frame. That's my opinion. And I don't think politics should be involved. Now, when you talk about attorneys, attorneys are regulated by the Florida Bar Association, but really it's the Florida Supreme Court. And there are things that nobody else can regulate because that's part of the judicial side of things. Well, with doctors, they're regulated as well, but now politicians want to regulate doctors and tell doctors how to do their jobs. Nobody tells attorneys how to do their jobs except for attorneys. Doctors should be the only ones who tell other doctors how to do their jobs, and they should be the ones who are, and you have your Florida Medical Board of examiners, I don't know what they are, but they're the ones who license attorneys. And they're the ones who license doctors. They're the ones who should be setting the policies or advising the laws regarding these things, not politicians who are not doctors. And I think most doctors would say what we're saying here today, that it should be up to the woman or her safety, and that at the moment that a baby's life is feasible outside of the womb, that's when a man should have a 50-50 say on what happens.
I totally agree. And the reason Trump is changing his position is because they looked at the polling, and he has a significant gender gap between men and women. And you're not going to win if you tell women that they can't do IVF, if you tell them that they have to They can't get an abortion even up to 6 weeks of the beginning of the pregnancy. So, I mean, if I was Trump's advisor, I would say, absolutely, you got to change your position on this. You're not going to win if that many women do not consider you. But I have here an article from CNN where they're talking about the debate, and I thought this was interesting. It says, over the past month, Harris has engaged in debate preparations with a small team of advisors. And then the preparations have included mock debate sessions with the role of Trump played by Philip Raines, a longtime Clinton aide. One advantage Harris has benefited from is advice from the only two Democrats to have faced off against Trump on debate stage, Biden and Clinton. And so I do not envy Kamala Harris in this moment, because debating Trump is difficult. He does not shut up. He just rambles on over people. He sort of does not let the other person speak. And in those 90 minutes, every moment counts, because you have millions of people watching you. And this will probably be the last time that Harris has an opportunity to have that many eyeballs on her.
For Trump, this is easy. He's already set a record for the most national debates. For Kamala Harris, this is going to be harder, and there's more pressure because everybody knows what to expect from Trump. Now, people are going to start defining her on this debate on this national stage. Also, what was interesting is Kamala was the one who was pushing for microphones not being muted.
I thought that was interesting.
And Trump was one of the microphones.
But I just saw today that they ABC have decided they are going to be muted when it's not your time.
And it should be that way. I mean, it just makes sense.
It makes sense.
And that's my thing. It's like I don't have anything against her personally. I don't know her. There's a lot of things that I agree with her on. But to me, she's just another puppet. She's not going to be the commander in chief. She's the puppet of the Democratic National Committee, convention. They're running it as a tribal community leadership thing. And that's not who we are historically as Americans. Where Trump is going to run it like a leader, he's going to have the final say. You listen to your advisors, but you're getting the boss.
Yeah.
Well, you're not getting the boss when it's with her, because she's always going to do what the community within her viewpoint believes.
It's unclear what she wants to do as president.
Well, and that's the other thing too. It's unclear.
I know her people say, well, she had to jump into this role in a very short period of time, but it's been like a month now. And where are the policy details? I'm a policy nerd,
right,
and I want to chew on this. And all that she said is that she cares about the middle class, that she believes in climate change, that she's pro-choice. I mean, we know her positions on things,
right,
but we want to know specifically what she's going to do. How is she different than Trump on, for example, economics? Although she did come out with a speech this week which was good. It was a step in the right direction. But one thing is, I watched. By the way, the convention speeches, the lengths were so different. Trump's convention speech was like almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
Kamala's was like 40 minutes.
Right.
And I think her speech was good, but also devoid of policy details.
Right.
It was just sort of, I believe in fairness. It was statements of values, but very little policy.
Right.
And that might work for the general population, but someone like me, I mean, I'm still going to vote for her, but still, I want more details.
Well, and this is ultimately, it's not like I'm voting for Trump, rather voting against Harris.
It's against the other person.
I've heard Donald Trump speak live. I was in D.C. for the Libertarian National Convention. He came out and he spoke, and I was really impressed. And yes, I know half of what he said was a lie. I know that for a fact. But but it was still cool to hear him give definitive answers and say, hey, these are the things I'm going to support. And he came out and said, I'm more of a libertarian than a Republican, because he's at a libertarian convention. And even though, and part of that, I believe, well, I mean, if he's before Republicans, he's going to say Republicans. And there were, in all fairness, half the room was Republicans, because he invited Republicans over. So half the room was Republicans, and he stated it, and the Republicans went nuts for it. He would say, I'm more of a libertarian. And so my thing with that, there was excitement. I loved how he approached the audience, and you didn't mind listening to him, because I think he spoke for over an hour. So it wasn't the 3 hours.
What are the things that he said that you think libertarians like to hear?
End wars, and if we have to go to war, you got to end it fast.
Yeah.
Stop giving taxpayer money to the military industrial complex,
Yeah.
and wars is a big one. There was COVID was a massive one. In fact, he wasn't. Libertarians were very upset with him and kind of boycotted him, which is why they did invite Republicans to his time there at the convention, and because his handling of COVID. Libertarians are anti-COVID vaccinations like you wouldn't believe. They were the front runners.
Yes.
They were the ones pushing for it, and they were really upset with him. But he did kind of admit that he could have done better, and he took the wrong advice from the wrong people. He didn't come out and say it that way, but you got that impression.
Well, I think that's great. I think all of us should be against foreign interventions that aren't going to benefit us, that are going to waste blood and treasure.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we get along, because I actually I'm more comfortable with libertarians than ultra right wing Republicans, because we both generally want a more peaceful world, and oftentimes it's the United States role in the world that is making it more violent.
Yeah. Well, the Libertarian Party, so I can put a plug in for the Libertarian Party. I don't know if you're ever going to transition over to the Libertarian
No,
Party.
but I'll hang out with you guys.
The Libertarian Party is phenomenal. In this, you get your hippies, and you get your hillbillies, anti-hippies, and then you also get your ultra educated. We have a lot of attorneys who are just fed up with the system, and they're the outliers attorneys, and you get a lot of weirdos, and I happen to love weirdos because I'm a weirdo. Why not? I'm right in my element. But you have essentially what the Libertarian Party is: socially ultra conservative, probably more conservative than Democrats. In fact, the Democrats embraced gay rights because of the Libertarian Party's movement in the 1970s and 80s, when that was the number one priority of the platform. It started in 1971, the party itself, and the biggest platform promise was to see gay rights established. And even this year, our presidential candidate
What's their name?
is Chase Oliver.
Okay.
And he's openly gay candidate. But there were people in the Libertarian Party who didn't want to support him because they're anti-gay. It was like, you guys remember how our party started? This is what we are. But you just, within a party, within the Republican Party and even the Democratic Party, has to go through their own civil war, and they will.
You know what I was interested by was that there was not a tremendous conflict within the Democratic Party's convention regarding Kamala's nomination. It was kind of just forced onto people,
That's
and
right.
everyone just went along with it. I thought there would be more delegates who were more on the Bernie side of the party and would have been like, no, we don't want Kamala. She's not liberal enough. And I didn't see that many news reports about an intra-party conflict, which I thought was. There were some protests outside of the arena, pro-Palestine protesters, and who were protesting the Biden administration's policy on that. But yeah, I thought there would be more conflict. I guess they all were just
Democrats in general fall in line. At least this time around, it's not every election cycle is going to be independent.
Yeah,
but
Clinton had a hard time in 2016 bringing the party
because
together.
Bernie was a strong supporter. I was a Democrat at the time, and I supported Bernie Sanders. Go figure. I'm ultra conservative financially or fiscally, but when it comes to what Bernie stood on, I was a Bernie bro all the way. And I ended up not voting for Hillary because they shoved her down my throat. And I was like, you know what? I don't fall in line. That's not who I am. Democrats generally right now are falling in line, and they'll take whatever's shoved down their throat, because there is a mentality in the Democratic Party, in my opinion, where it's more community driven, where Republicans tend to be, this is my decision. I will make an independent decision. I don't care what you think of me. They don't have the same fear of, oh no, what if I'm canceled?
Yeah.
Republicans don't have that fear, where Democrats, that's their biggest fear, is being canceled. That's where I'm happy to be where I am in my life. If you want to cancel me, What are you canceling? It's like, you want to sue me?
What does
Sue
that
me.
even
Sue me for
mean?
what?
Honestly, it's so stupid.
But there was a time when I was in the Democratic Party, I was terrified of being canceled because you had that pressure. That's why the Democrats will go through their own civil war, because that's not sustainable.
It's not.
And the Republicans are kind of getting through their civil war.
My issue with cancel culture is that I believe in second chances, and I believe that people are evolving beings. And so, obviously, we're talking about rape or murder. Yes, they should be canceled. But things like a racial slur or something like that, I think educate that person, teach them, what they did wrong and how they can be better. If they're willing to learn, they're willing to change, they should have a second chance. But to take somebody's career away, to take somebody's livelihood away because of something that they said is outrageous. How are people going to grow as a human being if they are just punished forever instead of giving them...
And they're shunned. Essentially, it's Lord of the Flies, I believe, right? The book. But they also had a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio that was kind of similar to, or based on it, or something like that. The Beach, I think.
Yes.
Where if you don't fit in to let's say there's 10 people. If 6 people believe one way and you're one of those 4, you are basically voted out or shunned. And it's a very dangerous way of living. And there are cultures who live that way. And you see it a lot in Africa. You see it a lot in the gay community.
It's the antithesis of the First Amendment.
Right, but we don't want to say it that way because it's one way of living, and there's nothing wrong with living that way. It's just not everybody's going to want to live that way. And in my opinion, it is historically an antithesis of how this country started, where private property was everything and individual rights. But then again, we screwed over black people for so long in this country. We kind of have to take our medicine with it. But that doesn't mean that we have to be shamed.
Right.
Because it wasn't us today. But yes, there was a history in this country of that. And just remember, I do believe that I'm one of those people who believe, and I might get canceled for this, but again, I don't care, cancel me.
Say it.
But I'm one of those people who believes that the Civil War was fought over black rights. It was fought over many things because you had the North and the South and the difference in cultures, but slavery was the main portion of that. And the North embraced black community, black Americans, black culture, and it was almost like slavery didn't exist in the North the same way. Obviously, it didn't. The same way in the South, and people, black communities or black individuals, black Americans were able to live the same life, and that's what was beautiful about the New England area and the North. They didn't see color, where in the South, black Americans were not Americans. They were property. They were horses. They were seen as dogs.
I don't think it was as rosy as that, but you're right. Obviously, the experience for black individuals was better in the North. It wasn't a colorblind society. They were still absolutely discriminated against. There were cases of discrimination, but for sure, it was nothing like the South.
You're a history teacher.
Yeah, last year I taught history.
You taught history. Well,
they went to the North because it was better, but it's not accurate to say that it was like the perfect society for black people. They were still seen as second-class citizens.
Perhaps. But at the same time, they got educated.
Yeah, and they got jobs.
Same access to jobs. So in wrapping all of this up, when I went and lived in Spain, I never felt safer in my life. I was going to get a dual citizenship because of my heritage. We qualified. My wife has a dual citizenship now because of her heritage, where we came. Our families came from Spain. So I never felt safer. I never felt more like loved. I could go to the bank and not show ID and cash checks. I had a job out there.
That's amazing.
Like I was just accepted. But I saw how black people were treated. And even though that's my roots, and I feel like I can say this, I ran from at least Madrid, where I was living. In general, there was a subtle racism where, no, you could not beat up on black people that were there. But black people couldn't get jobs.
Really?
Because they didn't fit the culture.
Wow.
And in Europe, they tend to live that community first lifestyle as they do in Africa. You have Africa, but Africans will come over to live in Spain, and these are true Africans.
Wow.
Where we have African heritage here, and we have Haitians here in Miami, and there is a difference in culture, but these are people coming from Africa, and they have their own culture, but they were shunned. They weren't hated, but they weren't going to be given jobs.
And that's a great point that you mentioned, because I think some liberals in America feel like America is the most racist country in the world, and nothing could be farther from the truth. Racism exists all across the planet.
And worse.
And in Europe, you have horrible cases of it because they're right next to Africa, right next to the Middle East, where a lot of white people in those countries cannot tolerate the existence of people from those continents. And so that's why I'm against cancel culture, specifically on this issue. Because if we're going to evolve as a country and eventually become a harmonious, multicultural society, we have to allow white people to make mistakes sometimes and learn. But I think we should wrap it on that note.
Very good.
Thank you guys for watching the first episode of Cafecito and Politics with Miguel Quintero and Bryan Hernandez. Next week, we'll be talking about the presidential debate. We'll be analyzing how that went. And thanks very much for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.